The Philippine flags were waving, the chants of Leban were echoing across center court, and Alex Eala had just delivered the most dominant performance of her grass court career, a 6-0-6-2 demolition of Priscilla Hahn in just 64 minutes. The crowd was electric, the atmosphere was euphoric, and then, everything changed. What happened next was never supposed to happen at a WTA 125 event in Birmingham. Cameras caught something that security had to stop, fans rushed forward, officials panicked, and within hours, a single moment had gone viral across 2 continents. What did Alex Eala do that forced security to step in, and why are fans still talking about it days later? Birmingham, England, June 2, 2026, Edgbaston Priory Club, 2 p.m. The morning had started with heartbreak. Just 24 hours earlier, Alex Eala and her Czech partner Nikola Bartunkova had held a match point in their first-round doubles match against British second seeds Harriet Dart and Maya Lumsden. At 9-8 in the deciding tiebreak, victory was just 1 point away, but the tennis gods had other plans. The home favorites rallied to win 3 consecutive points, snatching the match 4-6, 6-2, 11-9, and sending Eala off the court with a loss she would have to quickly forget. Singles, however, was a different story. When Alex Eala walked onto center court as the top seed of the Lexus Birmingham Open, the atmosphere was unlike anything the historic Edgbaston Priory Club had ever witnessed. Thousands of Philippine flags waved in the stands, the chants of Laban, Laban, Laban echoed across the manicured grass, and somewhere in the crowd, families who had traveled from Manchester, London, Liverpool, and yes, even from Manila itself held their breath, waiting for their champion to perform. She did not disappoint. Standing across the net was Australia's Priscilla Hahn, ranked 143 in the world. The two had history, 2 previous meetings, 1 win each. Hahn had taken their most recent encounter at the WTA Ningbo Open in October 2024, while Eala had prevailed in their first meeting at Roehampton in 2023. The head-to-head record stood at 1-1, the rubber match was here. But from the very first point, there was no contest. Eala's lefty serve was firing on all cylinders. Her ground strokes were crisp, her movement on grass fluid, her focus absolute. She raced through the opening set in just 22 minutes, winning 100% of her first serve points and converting 3 break points to hand Hahn a devastating bagel, 6-0. The second set was more of the same. Eala surged to a 5-0 lead, putting herself on the verge of a rare double bagel victory. The crowd was electric, sensing history. But Hahn, refusing to be completely humiliated, finally broke through, winning 2 consecutive games to trim the deficit to 5-2. It was a brief respite. Eala quickly regained her composure, closing out the match with a love hold in just 59 minutes. The final score? 6-0, 6-2. Total points won, 53-27 in Eala's favor. After the match, still catching her breath, the tournament official handed her a microphone. The crowd settled, expecting the usual post-match pleasantries. But Alex Eala had something else in mind. She looked up at the sea of Philippine flags, at the families who had crossed oceans to see her, at the children wearing shirts bearing her name, at the grandparents, wiping tears from their eyes, and she spoke directly to them. Maraming salamat sa suporta, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I didn't expect there to be so many Filipinos here. See you all tomorrow. The stadium erupted, the flags waved harder, and Alex Eala, still smiling, began walking towards the stands where her youngest fans were waiting. That's when everything changed. Birmingham, England, June 2, 2026, Edgbaston Priory Club, Centre Court, 3:05 p.m. The final point had just ended. Priscilla Hahn's backhand sailed long, and the scoreboard read 6-love, 6-2. Alex Eala had done exactly what the top seed was supposed to do: dominate, dismantle, and advance. But the real story was just beginning. As Eala'S walked toward the umpire's chair to shake hands, the crowd rose as one, 17,000 voices, many of them Filipino, many of them British fans who had simply been swept up in the electric atmosphere, erupted in a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of Edgbaston Priory Club. The Philippine flags waved furiously. The chants of Laban, Laban, echoed across the manicured grass. The tournament official handed Eala a microphone. The crowd settled, expecting the usual post-match pleasantries, a thank you to the fans, a nod to her opponent, a few words about the match. What followed was something no one in the stadium could have predicted. Maraming salamat sa suporta, Eala began, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I didn't expect there to be so many Filipinos here. See you all tomorrow. The stadium erupted again, but this time, the chants didn't die down. They grew louder, more insistent. Eala, Eala, Eala. She smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had endeared her to millions across the globe, and began walking toward the barrier separating the court from the stands. The Philippine flags were gathered there, thick as a forest. Children with faces painted in blue, red, and yellow held signs that read Laban Alex, Laban and Philippines proud of you. Eala reached the barrier. She extended her hand toward a young girl in the front row, no older than 8, who was clutching a hand-painted sign and crying tears of pure joy. The little girl reached back, and then, everything changed. The crowd surged. What had been orderly rows of spectators suddenly became a human wave, pressing forward, desperate for a glimpse, a touch, a moment with their champion. Phones rose in unison, recording the scene. Voices shouted over one another. The security line that had been holding back the crowd snapped like a thread. Within seconds, hundreds of fans had pushed past the barriers, flooding toward center court. Security officials sprinted onto the court. Their faces were pale, their radios crackled with urgent commands. 2 guards reached Eala first, forming a human shield between her and the oncoming surge. Another guard grabbed the little girl's hand and pulled her back behind the barrier, away from the crush. Clear the court, now. A security supervisor shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the crowd. Eala stood frozen for a moment, her hand still extended, her eyes wide. She looked from the security guards to the crowd, a sea of faces, some terrified, some exhilarated, all focused on her. She backed away slowly, her racket bag still slung over her shoulder, as the security team formed a cordon around her. Within 2 minutes, she had been escorted off center court, disappearing through the players' entrance. The crowd, now contained by reinforcements, began to dissipate, but the energy remained, crackling in the Birmingham air like stag before a storm. No one had been hurt, no one had been arrested, but the image of Alex Eala being rushed off the court, the top seed, the fan favorite, the woman who had just played the match of her life, would be seared into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. Birmingham, England, June 2, 2026, Edgbaston Priory Club, Centre Court, 3:08 p.m. The moment lasted no more than 30 seconds, but in that half-minute, Centre Court transformed from a tennis arena into something that looked like a rock concert. It started innocently enough. Eala, still holding the microphone, approached the courtside barrier, where the youngest fans were gathered. A little girl, no older than 8, held up a hand-painted sign that read, Laban, Alex, Laban. Her face was streaked with tears of joy. Her small hand reached out toward the Filipina star. Eala smiled. She leaned forward. She extended her own hand to meet the child's. And then, the surge. The fans in the rows behind the barrier, who had been pressing forward for the entire match, saw Eala'S approaching and collectively lost their restraint. What had been an orderly crowd became a human wave, pushing toward the court. Philippine flags waved wildly, phones rose in unison, capturing the moment, voices shouted over one another in a chaotic chorus of Tagalog and English. Alex, Alex, over here. Laban, Laban. Please, just one photo. Security officials who had been standing at ease suddenly snapped to attention. 2 guards sprinted toward Eala, cutting between her and the surging crowd. Another guard grabbed the little girl's hand and pulled her back behind the barrier, away from the crush of bodies. Back, everyone back. A security supervisor shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar. But the crowd didn't stop. They had waited for this moment, some for hours, some for days, some for their entire lives. The barrier that had seemed sturdy just moments ago now buckled under the pressure. Eala stood frozen for a heartbeat. Her eyes darted from the security guards to the sea of faces pressing toward her. For the first time all day, she looked uncertain. Then, the security team moved. 2 guards formed a human shield in front of Eala, blocking her from the crowd. A third guard took her arm and guided her backward, away from the barrier, toward the center of the court. A fourth guard called for reinforcements over his crackling radio. "We need more personnel on center court, now." Within seconds, a wall of security guards had formed between Eala and the stands. They linked arms, pushed back against the surging crowd, and created a corridor for the top seed to escape. Eala walked quickly, not running but clearly retreating, her racket bag still slung over her shoulder, her face a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. Then, she disappeared through the players' entrance, the heavy door swinging shut behind her. The security team remained on the court for another 5 minutes, slowly pushing the crowd back behind the barriers, restoring order to the chaos. No one had been hurt, no one had been arrested, but the image of Alex Eala being escorted off center court, surrounded by security guards, the Philippine flags waving frantically in the background, was already being uploaded to social media platforms across the globe. And within hours, that image would be seen by millions. June 2, 2026. Multiple locations. The clip surfaced within minutes, grainy, shaky, shot from a dozen different angles, but unmistakable. Alex Eala, surrounded by security guards, being rushed off center court as thousands of fans surged forward. Within 3 hours, the footage had been viewed over 15 million times. The hashtag #AlaSecurity trended globally. Filipino fans defended the passion. Critics called it a security failure, and the tennis world once again found itself divided over the phenomenon that was Alex Eala. "This is what happens when a sport underestimates its fanbase," one commentator wrote. 25,000 people showed up for a WTA 125 event. The tournament wasn't ready, the security wasn't ready, nobody was ready for Alex Eala. Others were more critical. "Players should never be put in danger," a former WTA pro posted. "The tournament organizers failed Alex today. She deserves better." The WTA, true to form, remained silent. But the most powerful response came from Alex Eala herself. Late that evening, she posted a short video on her Instagram account. She was back in her hotel room, still wearing her match shirt, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked tired but calm. "I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out to support me today. I saw the flags, I heard the chants, and I felt every single one of you." She paused. "What happened after the match? It was a little scary, I won't lie, but I know it came from love, not anger, not chaos, just love." She smiled. "So please, let's all stay safe, let's take care of each other, and let's keep cheering, but from a little farther away, okay?" The video received 8 million likes in 12 hours. Birmingham, England, June 3, 2026, the morning after. The sun rose over Edgbaston Priory Club, and the security barriers had been reinforced. Overnight, tournament officials had doubled the number of guards on center court. New metal barricades were installed around the players' tunnel. The post-match fan interaction zone was moved to a more controlled area, with staggered access and dedicated security personnel. What happened yesterday would not happen again. But the memory of that moment, the surge, the panic, the image of Alex Eala being rushed off the court, would linger long after the barriers were removed. Because something had shifted in Birmingham. The tennis establishment had always known that Alex Eala was popular. They had seen the flags at Indian Wells, they had heard the